Arthur Vance was a successful businessman, a man of routine and sharp intellect. His world was one of balance sheets and strategic planning, and his marriage to Eleanor, a woman he believed was his equal in devotion, was the anchor of his life. The call that brought him home early from his supposed business trip wasn't planned. It was an impulse, a sudden longing for the suburban villa he shared with Eleanor. He arrived quietly, parking his rental far down the street, intending to surprise her. He let himself in, the house silent, and then he saw it. It wasn't a note or a strange scent or a stray piece of clothing. It was a man's wallet, carelessly discarded on the hall table, a heavy, expensive piece of leather that definitely wasn't Arthur's. A wave of icy dread washed over him. He crept further into the silent house. The door to the master bedroom was slightly ajar. Through the gap, he saw them. Eleanor was locked in an embrace with another man. The scene was sickeningly intimate, a snapshot of a life that wasn't his, built on a foundation of lies. This wasn't a fleeting moment. This was deep, comfortable, and clearly habitual. Arthur didn't rush in. The primal urge to scream, to destroy, was there, but the intellectual control that had defined his career immediately took over. He became an observer, a ghost in his own home. He silently backed out, not letting the slightest tremor escape his control. He drove away, his mind a silent, churning vortex of pain. Later, he returned to the house when he knew they were gone, his key turning in the lock like a blade in his chest. He walked into the master bedroom. The sheets were rumpled, the evidence of their betrayal laid bare. He touched the linen, and the indescribable emotions he felt were a toxic cocktail of grief, rage, and a terrifying, cold clarity. Betrayal is a debt, the thought whispered in the silence of his mind, and I am a man who always collects. At that moment, the dark thought began to kindle. It wasn't about a simple divorce or even a messy confrontation. It was about making this profound pain, this absolute violation, the foundation of his retribution. He began to plan the most meticulous, the most devastating act of revenge imaginable. The next day, Arthur acted as if nothing had changed. He kept up the pretense of his business trip, watching, waiting, charting Eleanor's movements. She was blissfully unaware, basking in the glow of her illicit affair, believing her husband to be hundreds of miles away. In the late afternoon, Eleanor, after what Arthur later learned was a happy day with her lover, drove back to their secluded suburban villa. She walked in, her mind likely drifting back to the hotel room. Then she saw him, Ted. Her husband was standing there, the picture of a man returned early from a long trip, but with an unnerving stillness about him. "Arthur, you're home so early. Why didn't you call?" she stammered, the shock scrambling her careful composure. Arthur didn't answer. He simply walked to her and embraced her, a tight, crushing hug that felt to her like relief, but to him was the final sealing of a bond he was about to shatter. "Tell me about your day, Eleanor," he finally murmured, pulling back just enough to look into her eyes. She launched into the rehearsed lie, a banal tale of shopping and lunch with a friend. She lied with practiced ease, but Arthur saw the micro-expressions, the telltale tightening around her eyes. He let her finish, his expression unreadable. Then, without a word, he gave her a passionate kiss. It was deep, possessive, a final, unspoken plea for a confession he knew she would not give. This was the last chance, a psychological formality for a man whose heart was already encased in ice. She mistook it for passion, completely missing the guillotine blade hanging overhead. He pulled away, his voice quiet, deadly calm. "Does he love you?" The silence that followed was heavy enough to suffocate them both. Eleanor's face went white. All the blood drained away. She finally understood. Her meticulously constructed world had collapsed. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words meaningless. "No need," Arthur said, his eyes empty. The truth is often painful. I'm getting used to it. But this pain was caused by you. Consider this compensation. He then reached into his jacket pocket. It was a handgun, a heavy, cold piece of steel. Without a moment of hesitation, Arthur Vance pulled the trigger. The sudden, deafening gunshot tore through the villa's quiet. Outside, the noise immediately drew the attention of construction workers laboring on a nearby property. One of them, startled, ran toward the villa to investigate. Arthur, maintaining the illusion of a barricaded shooter, fired continuously at the window, forcing the frightened worker to flee. He fired one last shot, a calculated act to vent a manufactured rage. Then the meticulous cleanup began. He dragged Eleanor's body, still breathing though barely, into a hidden corner. He picked up the shell casings, wiping them clean of any potential prints, and threw them into a pre-arranged waste disposal unit. He stripped off his clothes, tossing them into the fireplace to be destroyed by fire. He used hot water to wash away every microscopic trace of gunpowder residue from his skin and hair. Arthur Vance did not flee. He calmly changed into a fresh set of clothes and waited for the police to arrive. More precisely, he was waiting for the most important person in his twisted plan to walk straight into his trap. The call had come in as an active shooter situation. Within the hour, the FBI and local police had sealed off the entire villa perimeter. The man in charge of the scene, the one everyone waited for, finally arrived. Detective Chief Liam O'Connell, a man Arthur knew only by reputation, a hard, respected man of the law. The police were operating blind, fearing a hostage situation or a second shooting. Liam called out, attempting to negotiate. Arthur's response was unexpected. He said nothing, simply walking to the front door and opening it wide. Then he called out, his voice echoing in the tense silence. "Just you alone, O'Connell." Liam, wary but committed, stepped forward alone, his weapon holstered, prepared for a tense standoff. But Arthur was not tense. He was supremely relaxed, almost buoyant, like an actor about to deliver the performance of his life. To put Liam at ease, Arthur even disarmed himself, placing his weapon on a nearby table. "Is she okay?" Liam asked, the question laced with professional concern. Arthur confessed. He calmly recounted the entire process in painstaking, horrific detail. The discovery of the affair, the confrontation, the motive, the pulling of the trigger. As Arthur spoke, Liam O'Connell's face went from professional concern to a sickening realization. A cold dread that transcended police work began to set in. He knew who Arthur's wife was. Eleanor Vance was the woman Liam O'Connell was having an affair with. Arthur's story hadn't been a confession, it had been a targeted broadcast. He had lured the cheating husband and the cheating lover into a room together. At that very moment, Arthur, with a practiced predatory movement, slowly advanced toward the table where he had placed the handgun, his eyes fixed on Liam. "Tell me, Chief O'Connell," Arthur purred, a chilling smile touching his lips. "How do you feel now? Tell me about the pain." Witnessing the pure malice, Liam lunged. His mind, clouded by shock, betrayal, and rage, could only focus on Arthur and the weapon. He grabbed Arthur's arm, wrestled him to the ground, and delivered a series of devastating, visceral punches. Punches fueled not by duty, but by a blind, personal fury. The ambush team, seeing the altercation, rushed in and subdued Arthur. The immediate relief was for Eleanor. The police discovered she was still breathing, barely, the bullet having passed through a non-immediately fatal area of her brain. She was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. Liam O'Connell looked down at Arthur, his eyes burning with hatred. He did not know that his blind rage, his unprofessional, emotional response, was the precise mechanism Arthur Vance had engineered. Liam's outburst had been step one in Arthur's master plan. The police collected all the evidence: the murder weapon, the shell casings, the confession signed by Arthur. Liam O'Connell, driven by a desire for swift, complete justice for his injured lover and to bury his own personal shame, quickly charged Arthur with attempted murder. The case was passed to the Assistant District Attorney, Marcus Thorne. Marcus Thorne was a rising star in the DA's office, a man whose conviction rate hovered over 97%. This case, a confessed shooter, a weapon recovered, an injured victim, was a formality. He barely glanced at the file. But Arthur Vance was not a man of formalities. At the pre-trial hearing, Arthur refused the public defender and chose to represent himself. He then did the unthinkable. He waived the preliminary hearing, demanding the case proceed directly to trial. Marcus was baffled, but assumed it was the arrogant posturing of a desperate man. The slap came quickly, violently. That evening, Liam O'Connell delivered the signed confession to Marcus, his face still etched with the raw pain of the scene. Thorne, Arthur Vance is not as simple as you think. This man is dangerous. Marcus dismissed him, confident in his abilities. He wouldn't be worried until the evidence failed. The next morning, the police lab results came in. They reported that the handgun found at the scene, the supposed murder weapon, bore no fingerprints. More critically, ballistics testing showed no traces of being fired. The weapon was pristine. Marcus stared at the report. This was impossible. A confessed shooting, an injured woman, shell casings found, but the gun was clean. This was the core of Arthur's brazenness. "He's playing with us," Marcus yelled at his team, throwing the report across his desk. "He's setting us up. A crime this calculated must leave a trace." They went back to the villa, scouring the scene. They found the shell casings, but even those were wiped clean, and, most damningly, they could not find the bullet slugs. Arthur had no gunpowder residue on him, and his clothes had been destroyed. The case had hit a brick wall. Marcus, desperate, went to the prison to meet the man who was now dismantling his career piece by piece. Arthur Vance seemed to have been expecting him. He did not answer Marcus's questions, instead offering a cryptic, unnerving metaphor. "You know, on an eggshell, there are very thin places with tiny cracks. If you get close enough, you'll see everything has a weak point. It will break there sooner or later." "Are you looking for my weak point, Mr. Vance?" Marcus challenged. Arthur smiled, a cold, predatory expression. "I've already found it, Mr. Thorne. You are a man who always wants to win." Marcus left, his stomach churning. He was facing a formidable mind. The trial began. Marcus, lacking physical evidence tying Arthur to the weapon, had to focus on the victim. The doctor testified that Eleanor's injury, the bullet passing through the frontal lobe, was indicative of a close-range shot, asserting that this was, without a doubt, a case of attempted murder. Marcus then called his star witness, Detective Chief Liam O'Connell. Liam took the stand, recounting the standoff, Arthur's confession, and the struggle. He was composed, professional, and damning. The moment Liam finished, Arthur Vance, who had been idly doodling on a notepad, abruptly stood up and objected. "Your Honor," Arthur said, his voice calm, clear, and carrying perfectly across the silent courtroom. "The police officer who arrested me was having an illicit affair with my wife. Legally speaking, I think this might be objectionable." The courtroom gasped. Marcus froze, the blood draining from his face. The jury looked horrified. Arthur's words had not only ruined Liam's credibility, they had demolished the entire structure of Marcus's case, painting the police chief as a conflicted, disgraced lover. In a blind, explosive rage, Liam O'Connell charged straight towards Arthur, a raw, unprofessional act that further convinced the jury that Arthur's claim was not only true, but the motive for a cover-up. The judge immediately called a recess, a tense look of helplessness on his face. In chambers, Arthur stated bluntly that his private investigator could prove the affair. When Marcus tried to use the signed confession, Arthur casually retorted that he had only signed it under duress, coerced by the enraged lover of his wife. All of Marcus's hard-won evidence was now worthless paper. The judge, looking directly at Marcus, declared a 5-day deadline. Mr. Thorne, you have 5 days to gather irrefutable, untainted evidence to link Mr. Vance to a crime. If that deadline passes, the charges will be dismissed. The defendant will walk free. Marcus returned to his office, the feeling of knowing the culprit but being unable to touch him an unbearable torment. His superior tore into him. You acted unprepared, arrogant, and hasty. Your stupidity will bring us public shame. You will pay the price for your actions, Thorne. That evening, a package arrived at Marcus's office. It was not from his girlfriend. Inside, nestled on velvet, was a broken eggshell. Arthur's provocation. The 5 days became a nightmare. Marcus chased every weak lead. He went to the hotel Liam had confessed to using. The room had been cleaned. The footage was too blurry. He went to Eleanor's hospital room, placing all his hope on a miracle. The doctor's words crushed him. Mr. Thorne, her condition is vegetative. Any reactions are simply nervous system reflexes. She will never wake up to answer questions. I am sorry. Despair set in. On the final night of the deadline, just hours before the trial, Liam O'Connell visited Marcus at his home. He was a broken man, shame and fear radiating off him. I found a way, Liam whispered, his eyes wild. I forged a ballistics report. I used my identity to create a perfect match between my service weapon and a bullet from a staged crime scene. We can use it to convict him. Marcus felt a sickening lurch in his gut. A part of him, the desperate, ambitious part, wanted to take the fake evidence, to win. But the upright prosecutor, the man who believed in the integrity of the law, recoiled. Absolutely not, Liam. I won't use dirty tricks. He told Liam to leave, but as he returned to his room, his resolve wavered. Arthur is guilty. He deserves to be punished. He wrestled with his conscience until the early hours of the morning. The trial began. Arthur rose, calm and confident, and moved for a judgment of acquittal. Since the court cannot provide incriminating evidence, I move for a judgment of acquittal. The judge looked at Marcus. Mr. Thorne, do you have any new evidence? Marcus held his phone, his finger hovering over the contact number for his assistant, who was waiting outside with the forged ballistics report. He could press send. He could win. He could save his career and deliver justice. But the memory of the clean gun, the smug smile of Arthur, and the integrity of the law won out. Marcus Thorne lowered the phone. Your Honor, he said, the words tasting like ash. I have no new evidence. The motion for acquittal was granted. The defendant was free to go. Arthur walked over to Marcus, his face a picture of feigned surprise. You surprised me, Thorne. You chose the law over the victory. Arthur Vance walked leisurely out of the courthouse, a free man. Marcus, still reeling, watched Arthur walk away. His thoughts were a blur of regrets and self-loathing. If he had only... A gunshot suddenly rang out in the courtyard. Marcus ran to the scene. Detective Chief Liam O'Connell had committed suicide with his service weapon, unable to live with the shame and the failure. Standing nearby, watching the tragic scene unfold, was Arthur Vance, a hint of satisfaction playing on his lips. Liam O'Connell was Arthur's second casualty. But Arthur's revenge was not complete. There was still Eleanor. Arthur went to the hospital, his goal now legal and chillingly absolute. He sought out Marcus, who was standing vigil. You have to be nice to me now, Willie, Arthur whispered. Why? Life and death depend on that machine that delivers an electric shock, and I can decide when it stops. That's why. Arthur had filed the papers necessary to legally remove his wife from life support. Marcus rushed to his superiors, desperate for a restraining order, only to be told Arthur had already filed a lawsuit against him for harassing his wife. "He's a citizen with a right to privacy, Thorne. You missed your chance. That's the law," his superior said coldly. Through a desperate, last-minute plea to his girlfriend's judge father, Marcus managed to get the restraining order, but it was too late. Arthur had signed the forms. The doctors, having confirmation, removed the life support machine. Marcus arrived moments later, bursting through the doors, only to be blocked by security. He watched the monitor as Eleanor Vance's heartline went flat. Arthur Vance had perfectly completed his revenge. He had used the law as his shield and his enemy's passions as his weapon. The failure cost Marcus Thorne his job. He was consumed by the case, unable to let go of the darkness Arthur had unleashed. He haunted the police station, re-examining the case file, searching for the clue he had missed. The clue came during a seemingly innocuous moment. Arthur called him, a farewell phone call to gloat. As Arthur spoke, Marcus glanced at a colleague's identical cell phone. He remembered seeing an identical phone on Liam O'Connell's desk during the arrest. He finally understood. He rushed back to Arthur's villa and laid out his brilliant, horrifying deduction. The gun you used to shoot Eleanor, the one that wasn't fired, the one with no prints, that was Liam O'Connell's service weapon. Arthur had known about the affair all along. The plan was never to kill Eleanor in the villa. "You knew Liam would be the police chief in charge," Marcus continued, pacing. "You opened the door, gave him the confession, and placed his clean, unfired gun on the table. You engineered the psychological trigger. When you reached for the gun, Liam O'Connell, blinded by rage and shame, lunged at you, not as a cop, but as a betrayed lover. The staged struggle was the key. When Liam tackled you, the physical evidence, the real murder weapon, the one you actually used to shoot Eleanor, which was your gun, was quietly handed to the very man rushing in to subdue you. Liam O'Connell carried the evidence out of the crime scenes for you." Arthur smiled, a flicker of genuine appreciation in his eyes. "And when Liam committed suicide, he used his service weapon, the clean, unfired one you'd swapped. The real gun, Arthur, is gone forever. You're right. It's a perfect crime." Marcus leaned in, his voice cutting the air. "Except for one thing, Arthur. I can find the bullet. It's still lodged in Eleanor's brain. If that bullet matches ballistics to a gun Liam owned and didn't report missing, the one he carried out, then you walk free. But if it matches a gun that Eleanor owned, or a gun you legally owned, we're still stuck." Arthur shrugged, calm. "So what, Thorne? First year of law school taught you about double jeopardy. You can't be tried for the same crime twice. I've already been acquitted of attempted murder. You lost." Marcus finally unleashed the trap he had been building. "Double jeopardy applies to the same crime, Arthur. But Eleanor Vance is dead now. You took her life by knowingly, calculatedly, and maliciously removing her life support after you were acquitted of shooting her. That is a new situation with new evidence. That, Arthur Vance, is murder with malice aforethought, a first-degree felony, a new trial." Arthur's calm facade finally fractured. "Get out of my house!" Marcus didn't move. "I just don't understand why you won't let go. She could have lived longer than both of us." As Marcus walked out, the FBI, stationed outside per Marcus's prepared instruction, moved in to arrest Arthur Vance for the murder of Eleanor Vance. Arthur Vance, the architect of a perfect crime, had fallen into the final, ingenious trap of the man he had underestimated, the man who always wanted to win, but only through the law. The eggshell, Arthur's symbol of a weak point, had finally been cracked, not where he expected, but by the relentless integrity of Marcus Thorne. The story of Arthur Vance, his betrayal and his cold revenge, was finally back in the hands of justice.